was like, I'm going to start this with $49,000. I gave myself 2 years or until I ran out of money, but that was to live on too. I knew nothing about flowers, so I would go buy flowers and practice and did it from my dining room for the first 2 years. I didn't just want to take somebody else's idea and like slightly tweak it. I wanted to actually disrupt an industry. I wanted to like do something different. Farmgirl was the first idea I had that checked all the boxes.
She started with no degree,
no funding,
and her life savings,
and built one of America's
fastest growing floral brands,
turning Farmgirl Flowers
into an over $65 million business. Today's guest
is Christina Stembel.
I got very close to running out of money at year 1.5, down to $411 at one point. Thankfully, I just paid rent, so I still had a couple weeks before I'd pay rent again. To my dismay, I was never able to go raise capital. I've gotten 104 no's.
Why did you keep going, even though it was so tough?
The fact that I'm able to bootstrap without running out of money is the accomplishment that I'm most proud of in my entire life. I never started this company to be a small business. I want to grow it to $1 billion, and so that's what I'm doing.
Hear the stories, learn the proven methods, and accelerate your growth and future through entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Foundr Podcast with Nathan Chan.
The first question I ask everyone that comes on is, how did you get your job?
Yeah, so I got my job by just doing the hard work. I mean, my job was every job. So I wore all the hats. And so just being willing to do every single job gave me the job.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's usually how it is when you first start. So how did you find yourself, doing the work you're doing today? How did Farmgirl Flowers start?
Yeah, so it's not the story that most people think. Everybody kind of wants this romanticized version of, I must have grown up like frolicking in my grandmother's garden or loving flowers. And it wasn't that at all. I just wanted to start a business and I wanted it to be able to check some boxes. Mainly, I wanted to be able to grow really big. I wanted to actually do something different. I didn't just want to take somebody else's idea and like slightly tweak it. I wanted to actually like go in, and I hate to use the word disrupt because it's so overused, but I wanted to actually disrupt an industry. I wanted to like do something different in an industry. And so flowers was the first idea. Farmgirl was the first idea I had that checked all the boxes. Another big one was I knew it needed to be bootstrapped. I knew there was no way that I was going to be able to go down to Sand Hill Road here and get one of the big, Andreessen Horowitz to invest, millions of dollars into me because I didn't have a tech pedigree. I don't have a college education. I have a very untraditional, backstory. So it wasn't really possible. So this was the first idea that I knew that I could bootstrap. And so that's why I went for it. And it did check all the boxes. But the one that I didn't know back then that I wish I would have is how hard perishability would be. Because if I was going to start a business now, I would definitely have a checkbox that says, is it perishable? Yes or no. And if it's yes, I would like go on to the next idea. But that wasn't the case. So it was the best idea I had out of probably 4,000 ideas. I thought that I could do.
Okay, interesting. And what were you doing before that? Like, what is your background? Is marketing, PR, products, tech, like?
Yeah, you're giving me a lot of credit. So my background before was just, I did a lot of jobs. I was in hospitality. My last job before starting Farmgirl Flowers was at Stanford University, which is ironic since I didn't go to college. I ran a catering company within the university that was owned by the university to start, which I learned a lot from that helps me now today. And it also was great because I was able to kind of start a company within a company without the risk. I had a paycheck. And then after that, I became the director of alumni relations. So I did a lot of programs and events, and we used flowers at those events, which is why I started researching the flower industry, because we would buy a lot of flowers. I couldn't understand why they cost so much, which led me down this rabbit hole of research on why flowers cost so much, only to find out very quickly that I understood why they cost so much. And I thought, I switched very quickly from the event space to the e-commerce space because that was where most of the opportunity and the white space was that I could go into and start something in. So it was just, my background was varied. I've worked lots of wage level jobs, coffee shops, hospitality, hotels that I worked my way up because I didn't go to college. I always had to start at the bottom, and I'd worked my way up to, till I was running the hotels and then going and working for the university. But I knew for at least 10 years that I wanted to start a business, and it was just trying to figure out which one. that I could start and that I thought would actually be able to scale.
Amazing. Well, look, you've done really well for your first business. So how long ago was it when you launched?
Back in 2010. And everybody thought I was crazy then to leave, a pretty stable job. Stanford's not going anywhere, even though it's considered a nonprofit, So, it was still the economic downturn in 2010. People are like, wait, you're quitting your stable job at Stanford to start a flower shop? And I'm like, no. And how many times I'd be like, it's not a flower shop. It's an e-commerce flower company, but people thought I was crazy. But now all the research I do has shown that, companies that start during, bad economic times are actually the ones that tend to do better. So I'm always telling people, even right now when, people are scared about, the recession that's probably looming in front of us, like it's the perfect time to start a business. There's a lot of pros for it.
Yeah, I agree. So talk me through kind of how you kind of got the business up and running. You said, proudly you're bootstrapped, which is incredible. So did you start with a Shopify store? Was Shopify, I think Shopify was still early days, or they weren't around?
They weren't around then. At least they weren't around in a way that I knew about them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, 2010, I quit my job in June. I gave myself until August to get a website up. That didn't happen. It took till November. But a good friend of mine, his company built it for me for only a few $1,000s back then. I mean, what I spend in 1 week of development work now, less than 1 week of development work now. So, it was just very scrappy. I had $49,000 of savings. I was like, I'm going to start this with $49,000. I gave myself 2 years or until I ran out of money, but that was to live on too. It was like one account, I'm like, I need to live on this and I need to start this company. And so everything was very bare bones, very like grassroots. It cost about $5,000 to start the website. I had to go teach myself how to make flower arrangements. I knew nothing about flowers. So I would go buy flowers and practice and watch YouTube videos and how to process flowers and everything like that. And just did everything myself. I did it from my dining room for the first 2 years.
Yep. Wow.
I got very close to running out of money at year 1.5. I got down to $411 at one point. Thankfully, I just paid rent. So I still had a couple weeks to pay rent again. And then at the 2-year mark, my corporate attorney landlord found out I was running an illegal business from my dining room and then gave me the pink slip that either I had to get out or the business had to get out. So I moved the business out before I would have actually, because I still wasn't financially stable. The first year I say we, because it made me sound, like we were big time. It was just me in my dining room, $56,000. And the second year did $276,000. So I thought, wow, 5X growth. That's amazing. And then between the second and third years when it started to get some traction, but I had zero marketing dollars to spend. When I look back at my first financial model, it's hilarious because I think I had 24 cents per unit in there for marketing.
Wow.
I'd always been in operations, working in hospitality and everything. So I just like marketing, this is like a waste of money. I could like hire people for this, and like, instead of putting it into marketing spend. But for the first probably 2.5 years, maybe 3, all of my marketing was going to coffee shops around San Francisco and putting out a flower arrangement with these little marketing cards that I made that cost like 3 cents a piece. And every week I would go back to each coffee shop in different neighborhoods. I did them all over the city. And I would count how many cards were taken. And if like 40 or 50 cards were taken every week or more, then I would deem it a worthy expense to put another bouquet there for the next week. But if only 10 or 20 were taken, I was like, I don't think that's worth the $20 it costs to do this flower arrangement. So that was it. And it was going to a lot of networking events at night and taking flower arrangements there. I would always like put them on the registration tables everywhere. Even though I didn't ask, I just put them out with cards. And that was all of my marketing spend. And it worked. So people picked up those cards and that's how they found out about us and about me at that point. And, between the second and third years, when it really started to get some traction, I hired my first employee. We went from 276,000 to 920 that year. So almost broke $1 million. But really from the start, I thought I was going to be able to prove out the concept and then go get funding. Like that was always the plan. I was like, I just need to prove, it was a very different model. It was, less is more. In the early days, we only had one bouquet option. That's it on our site. Everybody else had a minimum of 169 on their website. And so the education was really challenging because this was way before the less is more that everybody has now. The fewer better, less is more, everything that, from anything from clothing to shoes to anything now. There's lots of companies that do that. But this was very early in 2010. And so trying to, educate consumers, and they couldn't call us and order red roses and baby's breath, that they just had to take our daily bouquet, was challenging to do. And it took a couple of years to do that. And to my dismay, I was never able to go raise capital. I've gotten 104 no's. I've tried many times. And this is now the first time I can honestly say that I'm so glad that happened, though, because we are in such a better place, and we're, very, doing really well with profit right now, and to own your company and be able to do whatever you want with it, and to be able to make the decisions that you want, it's amazing.
Hey Foundr fam, I want to take a quick break from the conversation to talk to you about something super exciting. We're officially partnered with Omnisend, the email marketing and SMS platform built specifically for e-commerce founders. We've been recommending Omnisend to Foundr students for a while now because it just works. Whether you're launching your first store or you're scaling to 7 figures, it really helps you automate your marketing and get real results. Did you know on average, Omnisend customers make $68 for every $1 they spend, which is an insanely good return on investment. And because you're part of the Foundr community, you get 50% off your first 3 months with the code FOUNDR50. Just head to omnisend.com/Foundr without the E to get started. All right, now let's jump back into the show.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I'm curious, I'd love to delve, I definitely want to go from year 3 all the way up to 10 and really talk about that journey. But if we could rewind for a second, I'd love to know about finding the stock, like for your first order to fulfill, and how you got your first customer, and how you even got, like in your first year, that $50,000 in revenue. Like that's customers. That's like where and when you consider product market fit, somewhere around, probably in between 1 and 2, you've kind of like gone, okay, we're on to something here. How did you know to keep going, even though, you were struggling?
The first, when you asked about stock, like when I had the product, you mean, to because
Yeah.
it's not an inventory heavy business to start. Now it's inventory heavy because, I have to order, we can't order off the shelf anymore. Like back then I could order off the shelf, and we were really, I was very fortunate that we had a very robust flower market in San Francisco. There's very few cities. There's only really 2 cities in the United States I could have done that in. If I was in the middle of the country, or, if I was in Chicago still, or back in Indiana where I grew up, I couldn't have started this company because I didn't have the accessibility to small quantities of flowers. Because I had a flower market in San Francisco, I could go and buy one bunch of this and one bunch of this. All I needed was a wholesale license to do that. And so, I remember telling my dad, we still talk about it to this day, I just need to get 11 orders a day so I can break even on the flowers that I'm buying, because I have to buy so many different types of flowers to make this bouquet that I needed 11 orders. And it took a while to get to 11 orders a day, a long while. And so that's how I came up with the idea for the coffee shops, though, was I had extra flowers that I didn't have orders for. And so instead of throwing them away because they're highly perishable, you have about 3 days before you can't use them anymore, I would need something to do with them. I was like, how can I turn this into marketing? And so that's why I took them to coffee shops, the excess ones. And then to get customers, really, it was just my first customer, of course, was friends and family. So in 2010, when I started November and December, I don't even count that as revenue because those were just friends and family, right? So,
Okay.
but really the first real pain, they were paying my friends and family, my people that didn't know me, my first customers. I remember being giddy when I would look in the back end of the site and be like, I don't know this person. This is someone I don't know, when they're ordering flowers from me. That was from the coffee shops. It really was. Or it was friends of friends. I sent out emails to my friends being like, can you send this out? I'd make a little marketing flyer and be like, can you send this to your email list and stuff? It was just very much that. It was anything I could do that didn't cost money. I did for marketing. And, I even did a few illegal things, like papering people's cars with just I'd make them flyers and be like, Valentine's Day is coming, Farmgirl Flowers, and put it on people's windshields and stuff. So, and that was very cheap because I would just print it myself and cut them, at home. So, it was things like that. And that's where the customers came from. I had no digital spend at all. until probably 2013, I'd say, when I started doing digital spend. And I got really lucky with that. And I just can't, I can't take credit for how well we were able to build our digital presence, because the timing of when we started, you couldn't do that now. Like, we were acquiring customers in 2013 and 14 for under $1. Like, it was 90, yeah, to acquire a customer, because this was before, and my ex-husband worked in marketing at Facebook too. So I also had that benefit. But, it was great timing, because it was before all of the big companies. They hadn't transitioned from, Nordstrom. The big companies are all looking for 25, 24-year-old female consumers. We're all fighting for the same people, right? And it was before they had were savvy enough to have switched over all their traditional channels, because they all are huge companies and have tons of red tape, right, to digital channels. And so they haven't done that yet. And so now, there are certain times like Black Friday, we don't even try to market. We just turn off our ads. It's not even worth trying to do that to acquire that customer when, those companies are spending so much money to do it. But it's being smart about when you're going to spend it. But back then, it was easy. To be honest, nothing was easy. I shouldn't say it's easy, but it was cheap. It was, to acquire a customer under $1 is phenomenal. And I wish we could do that now. We still are well under $10. We've never really exceeded $10 at customer acquisition. This year, we turned off marketing when COVID hit in March to conserve every dollar we could. And then we found we didn't need to turn it back on, because we didn't have the supply for the demand, even, because we're over 100% year-over-year growth right now.
That's fascinating. So in the early days, you basically just, did things that don't scale, as Paul Graham would say, and you kind of kept going. Why did you keep going, even though it was so tough?
Yeah, because it was sweating. You have to really build a very authentic brand. And that's what I was doing. So I put in a lot of work to build, we're now benefiting from that work that I did from the first 5 years of building a really authentic brand that people love. It takes a lot longer to do it, So, even though I don't have explosive growth. It is funny that everybody thinks we're an overnight success. And when I tell them we're 10 years old, they're like, oh my gosh, I just heard about you a couple of years ago, though. And I'm like, yeah, because I was in my dining. So, it's I think Larry or Sari from Google said, after 5 years or after 8 years, we were an overnight success, and that's how it feels for Farmgirl. And it did scale, but it just took a lot longer. 10 years is a long grind. And I think the reason I kept going is because I think I, like most entrepreneurs, have a really big fear of failure, and I don't quit much. And so I just needed to prove that I could make this work. And it was working from the standpoint of, we're doubling every year at least, and so that's we've never had the 20% growth year. That would be horrible, I would consider. But to most companies, that's a good year, right? So we were always doubling or tripling. The lowest year we ever had was 50% growth or 49% growth. And that was somewhat intentional, because we needed to fix some problems that we were having, supply chain, distribution, and also some culture issues internally. So, because we'd grown so fast. So we've put the brakes on sometimes intentionally. But it's hard. I think that most people just gloss over how hard it is. And, I think we get this over glamorized viewpoint of venture capital, and we think that companies are supposed to become unicorns in 3 years, and that's the norm. And that's not normal. That's the exception. And, we like to call ourselves the workhorse in a sea of unicorns. In Silicon Valley, everybody's focused on being a unicorn, and we're focused on being the workhorse. We're going to win at the end. We're going to have built a really good company that's profitable. I like to say we kick it old school. We spend less than we make. We're a healthy company. We treat our team right. We have great benefits for our team, and we worry about more than just the bottom line. And we're able to do that because we don't have to answer to investors that are looking for that 3 to 5 year 10x turnaround, return on their investment. And so it's funny, because half the people I talk to think 10 years is so fast to have built a $65 million company. And half the people are like, oh my gosh, 10 years. How have you been doing it for 10? And it depends on what day you talk to me on which camp I'm in. So, but usually 10 years is a long time.
Yeah, look, I know what you mean, especially if you're in, San Fran. And like it's crazy, like the growth and all sorts of things, but you're making that conscious choice to grow controllably, which gives you all the power. And like it is a really great alternative path. And I think there is a big bootstrapping movement. You look at like the guys at Basecamp. There's many other founders that are now choosing to go down this pathway. So that it's not just a one side fits all.
Yep. I think we need to talk about it more because it's something, the most freeing moment probably for me was when I finally realized that success does not equal funding. Like I can be successful without funding and I can stop chasing it and stop spending. I was spending 30 to 40% of my time pitching to people.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of time. I have spent thousands of hours pitching in the
Really?
last,
Wow.
oh my gosh, so many. And every single time it was a no, or a couple times we got yeses, but horrible offers. And, I did a lot of research and I got very bitter for a long time. And, then I realized, look, I have less than a 2% chance of raising capital. As a solo female founder, I have less than a 2% chance. You take like tech, like software companies out of that, I have less than a 1% chance of raising capital. Why in the world am I spending 30 to 40% of my time pitching to a bunch of guys who have never actually built a company and they're telling me what I should be doing differently? And I'm sitting there thinking that, oh my gosh, at first I was thinking they're so smart. They're so much smarter than me. I didn't even go to college. And then by like the third year pitching, I was like, no, I know what I'm doing. Look, I'm building, look how fast we're growing. We've not run out of money. The fact that we haven't run out of money should give me enough accolades and enough just proof is in the pudding, basically, to say, how many companies can grow a perishable product company where even the big guys do less than 10% margins. Most are 6 to 7%, and that's billion-dollar flower companies. The margins are tiny. They're scarce in what we're doing. And the fact that I'm able to bootstrap without running out of money is the accomplishment that I'm most proud of in my entire life. And the fact that VCs and private equity individuals don't see the value in that, to me, shows me that they're not the smartest people in the room. Because if I saw that in front of me, and when I have enough money to invest in lots of female-owned businesses, which I can't wait to do one day, I will give so many points to people that can do that, because it's the hardest thing in the world to do. It absolutely is. So, and not having to spend 30 or 40% of my time felt like a gift I was given back. And it also seemed like the wisest decision, because if I have a 1 to 2% chance max, then I should be giving it 1 to 2% of my time.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. So how many no's do you reckon you got in those first 5 years of trying to raise VC?
104. I have a spreadsheet. I'm going to send them all. I'm going to have my pretty woman moment, and I'm going to send them with my check, and I'm going to be like, big mistake, huge mistake.
So 104.
104 no's. Mm-hmm.
104 no's. Wow. What a story. So let's go back a little. So first 3 years, broke $1 million. Obviously probably had a couple of employees. Were you still just servicing the local San Fran market, or were you starting to service other states too?
Only San Francisco. So my intention was always to get national shipping going within 2 years. And I was so wrong. That was not possible to do that. The subsidies on shipping were huge, and I had no idea how big they were. So I couldn't afford it until year 5.5. At 2015 mid-year, we started with just some, not national shipping. We started just doing some other Bay Area areas. So like we were only in San Francisco, which is 7 miles by 7 miles. It's a very small 49-mile squared radius. It was very tiny for 5.5 years. And so we were able to build it. We have pretty market saturation in San Francisco, and we should have launched national shipping much sooner than we did, but I just couldn't afford it. Our subsidies started at $19 per box that we had to subsidize. And that's, I mean, if we just done rack rates before I had enough buying power, it was almost $200 to ship a box, and you can't charge consumers that. So I did all kinds of focus groups to find out how much we could charge. All of our customers said basically $15 was the sweet spot. I had it like tiered, if we did $15, 92% of people in my focus group would buy. If it was 18, it was like 80 something percent, 81 or 82%. And then when I went up to 25, which was the highest tier, which is what we launched national shipping with, 2% of people cold said that they would buy. You know how much we still
Wow.
charge for national shipping? $25. We have not been able to
Wow.
get shipping rates down because even once we launched national shipping, what I could afford to, which was in 2016, we did, some local areas, additional local areas in 2015. And then 2016, we started doing California shipping. Then mid-year, we started doing national shipping. And those subsidies, instead of going down, they increased very quickly. And I hadn't anticipated that because when I was doing my modeling on it, I anticipated that the entire United States would grow at the same rate, all of the zones. And that's not what happens. Major metro areas on the coasts grow faster. And so New York City grew very fast, and that's the furthest zone away from San Francisco. Florida grew very fast. Texas grew very fast. Those are still our biggest states outside of California. And our subsidies grew at one point to almost $40 a box.
Wow.
Yeah. And so knowing your numbers is really important. Otherwise, you run out of money super quick. So, I would have to control how many we could even ship. So like the first Mother's Day that we were shipping nationally, we sold out in 4 minutes. I could only afford to do 200 boxes.
Crazy.
200. Yeah. And after 200, I ran out of money for subsidies. And so then it just gradually I would be able to open up more and more. And then in 2017, about a year later, we had, enough margin in other areas that we were able to negotiate, better supply chain costs and things like that, that then I could put that towards. And I always took from my marketing buckets, which is why my marketing is often $2 or $3 for my CAC. Like when I tell people our ROAS is 27, they're like, that's not right. You're not doing the math right. And I show them and they're like, no, it's 27. I'm like, yeah, because I never have enough money to spend on marketing because that's the first bucket I take it from for shipping subsidies, So 2017 mid-year, we were able to open it up without selling out, except for holidays.
How come you didn't set up like supply chains in the different cities or in like a traditional e-commerce business? If you put, let's just say, start in Australia, you see a lot of customers coming from US, so you set up probably something in like middle of the US, or maybe you just do East Coast or West Coast, and you can control Canada and US, and then you set up something in Europe. Like why didn't you do that? Is it because of the flowers?
No, it takes a lot of money to set those up, and bootstrapped, we've never had $1 million or $500,000 to set one up, it took about $680,000 to set one up. So now we have one in Miami. We're opening other ones. We're doing a hybrid model with fulfillment centers and distribution centers. But the other reason that I don't just do what all the other flower companies do, and they have bouquet makers and farms ship for them all of their product, is because we're a high design bouquet. So the thing that sets us apart is we are a designed bouquet. We are not just a bunch of flowers. And so that's why we have a devout following that is willing to spend $25 to ship their flowers to them instead of free shipping like everybody else too. Because we have a better product in our opinion. And so, I tested 7 different companies to see if we could use that 3PL type model. And we couldn't, and keep the design where it needed to be. And so I knew we needed to open our own facilities then, and also, highly perishable, by the way. So the flowers we use a lot more specialized varieties of flowers than a lot of our competitors because they don't last as long, which is why they don't use them. They can't sit on a pallet in a cooler for 2 weeks until those button mums are used. When you're using garden roses that have like a 1 week shelf life, you have to use them within 24 hours or the customer's not going to get a week out of them, So we use higher quality, more expensive flowers, a designed bouquet, and everything's highly perishable, both inbound and outbound. It adds a lot of complexity that you can't I wish we could use 3PLs that are just boxing and shipping, like, pull pack, sweaters for us. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So we have to open up our own, which is what we've done now, but we have to do it more slowly than we'd like to because we just don't have millions of dollars to do that at once because we're bootstrapped.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I totally understand. So one of my friends, he runs one of the largest hamper companies in Australia. So I understand the challenges around perishability. And I also understand the challenges around seasonality and being able to model how much stock to pre-purchase. I'd love to know, because one thing I did notice is even when you first started, you said, I've got to sell 11 to break even. Like, I think that's a really good takeaway for people. like I'm not a mathematics person. I was hopeless at maths, but I'm not bad on my numbers, and I really got to know those numbers. Like I think I can really see that you know your numbers. So tell me about kind of modeling that out, especially around seasonality. Mother's Day would be a big time for you. Obviously Christmas, because would you say you guys are a seasonal business, or because you've gone kind of the more personalized premium approach, it is less seasonality? There's less seasonality in your model, or?
Yeah, I mean, so we're lumpy. I think every company is lumpy in some way. So we're lumpy like every company, but it's less than what people think. So, from October through end of May is our busy season. So that's a long busy season. And then June through September is our slow season. We go down about 30% during those months. So we're lumpy like everything else, and everything is planned. And when I talk to, I'm in YPO and some other entrepreneur groups. So when I talk to other CEOs, I have a big network of friends, are CEOs, and they're just like dismayed by like how much risk there is at what we do. What you just said, if we overbuy for a major holiday, we'll go out of business. We literally will go out of business because we're buying millions of dollars of flowers well before, and we're so, big that we are custom growing with a lot of farms. So we're guaranteeing that every stem that they grow for us, if it meets our quality standards, we will buy. And that is a year before any of the orders come in. So, and pandemic happens or a recession happens this next year. Like there's a lot of things that go into that on planning for it. And, we have some really positives to our model that help with that, where, with our mixed bouquets, our signature burlap wrap bouquets, our maces, you don't get to pick what the flowers are at all. Like we have some varieties that you do get to pick, but with our mixed bouquets, you don't get to. So if I have to sub things later on because of quality, or I need, this single stem product we have didn't sell, I can move those stems into one of our mixed bouquets and do a new recipe for it. So there is some flexibility that our model, this novel, concept that I came up with that was different than everybody else, allowed us some pros with that helps with supply chain management. But it's so risky. Like when we were shut down for the shelter in place in San Francisco, they gave us 12 hours to shut down. They gave everybody 12 hours notice. That's it. And we had hundreds of thousands of dollars of flowers already on their way to us. We had to throw out a lot of flowers, $150,000 we had to throw out. If we had to do that often, we would go out of business. And, if we over order by more than, a couple percent, we could go out of business, so it's really risky, and we have to know our numbers. And this is why, people get very upset when we sell out. And I'm like, I would rather sell out all day long than overbuy and go out of business because I just had to throw away, $500,000 worth of flowers because I overbought that week, so it's challenging. I'm very lucky that I have an amazing team. I have somebody on my team who her projections are, crazy. Like a year from now, she'll tell me how many medium burlap wrap bouquets we're going to sell this week next year. Like, and she's within like 1.3%. It's crazy. Like she's so on it. She's been with me for many years. And it's interesting how, things stay the same, the same percentage are buying mediums now that are buying later. So it's interesting to see that. The psychology of purchasing is really interesting to see that, but it's risky. It's really, really risky. I have there's nothing I can say that takes away the risk because it's a big risk.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear because, like I said, my friend, he has a similar type model to you, and we're quite close. I actually met him through EO, and I hear you, like I really do, because it's Christmas time. You got those 3 months for him where it's just crazy.
Yep.
So I'm curious, coming back to year 3, broke the $1 million mark. Sounds like you're really starting to get traction now. What do you think that was? Was it just compounding of just building the brand grassroots style and really starting to ramp up on the digital side?
Honestly, this may sound, marketing people would not agree with me at all on this, but I will stand behind it. It was having a better product. It was really being focused on our product and our customer experience, because word of mouth, I cannot stress enough how important it is. And so, women loved us. And the other thing is, everybody assumes that men are the ones that buy flowers. They're not. 80% of people that buy flowers are women buying for women. You buy for your mom and your sister and your girlfriends. And the reason is because you know how it feels to get flowers. And so you want to give all the, your loved ones in your life that feeling. And, Valentine's Day is the only time that flips. It becomes 90% men. I hate that holiday. But the rest of the year, it's women buying for women. And when women love something, they love it. And they tell all of their girlfriends about it. And so that's what happened with us. We have this, we told a story about who we are, what we do. We have these little pins that go in each of our boxes have a little pin that has a story on it that's about grit or resilience. Or, we've done a lot with the unboxing experience to make it like a great, this wonderful thing, instead of it being, oh, I got flowers. After so excited to get a Farmgirl box and they're like Instagramming it and stuff. So, those women told all of their girlfriends, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing flower company. You have to try them. And that there's no other reason that we grew other than we made a better product, a better mousetrap, basically. And we really stuck with that. And we made, a better customer experience. We still have all of our customer service that's in-house, and we make sure that we take care of every customer. And, all of the review sites, they rave about us, and it's not about our product. It's about our customer experience. It's about our customer service. And, people don't put enough value into that, and everybody talks about, like, if somebody has a bad experience, they're going to tell 10 people, and if somebody has a good experience, they're going to tell one person. I don't agree with that. I do think people tell 10 people if they don't like it. But if women really love it, like last weekend, all my girlfriends are like talking about all my clothes they loved them when I saw them. And I was like, okay, well, they're like, where'd you get it? And so send me all their referral codes. And all I was doing was sending referral codes to my girlfriends of where they can buy their clothes and stuff. So if you really love a company, a brand, and a product, you're going to share it. And that's what happened. And that's how we were able to grow without any money.
Hey guys, I really hope you're feeling inspired from today's interview. Now, the truth is, all successful e-commerce founders started from zero, with a spark of an idea and a whole lot of determination. But let's be real, building or growing an e-commerce business is no walk in the park. And that's where Foundr Plus comes in, which I'm really excited to share with you. It's a culmination of a decade worth of work at Foundr. So if you're feeling stuck in your e-commerce business, you're lacking confidence to move forward, or you're worried about making costly mistakes or not knowing how to grow your business, Foundr Plus is here to support you on your journey. You get access to a customized learning pathway with proven frameworks from successful e-commerce founders for fast results, incredible programs, a supportive community, weekly live mentorship, exclusive savings on startup tools, and 24/7 real human support. Try Foundr Plus today for just $1 for 7 days so you can accelerate your business goals. Visit foundr.com/start $trial or click the link in the description to claim your trial. All right, now let's jump back in the show.
That's awesome. Yeah, look, I do agree with your sentiment there that, like, when you can find a product that just flies off the shelves, that's when you know you're onto something. And it is so much easier to market. It is so much easier to sell versus a subpar product and you need next level marketing. So yeah, no, look, and that's really pushed from, San Fran, Silicon Valley. Those, like, they're obsessed with the product. They're really product people down there. So it sounds like maybe a bit of that has rubbed off on you.
Definitely. But it's interesting to me that there's many other Silicon Valley flower companies that started after us that look strikingly similar. And other
really?
Yes, absolutely. And the thing, they took a lot of inspiration from Farmgirl Flowers on almost everything. The one thing they didn't was making the product in-house because it cost a lot more, right? But that's the only way to keep the quality where you want it, to have a design bouquet. You can't have the same people making Safeway or the big grocery stores bouquets as making yours and expect them to look different, right? And so it's interesting to me because they, and I try to explain this in the pitches, those 104 pitches that turned me down. I try to, when they'd be like, yeah, but it's not sustainable to have $10 customer acquisition costs. I'm like, I get it, it's not sustainable, but I don't think I'll ever have to have $80 customer acquisition cost, like our competitors do. And the reason I won't have to is because people always come back to Farmgirl Flowers because I make sure that we have a better product and we have a better customer experience. So if the average American consumer buys flowers 4 times a year, they come back to Farmgirl 4 times a year. And so I don't need to spend $80. So the other companies that, like, aren't putting the emphasis on the product, you're going to have to keep spending that marketing because you have to acquire new customers all the time. Because when people come, they don't like what they get. You know, when I would go buy from those companies, I felt ripped off. I felt like I got a grocery store bouquet that I spent $100 on. And that's what's happening because they're not focusing on the customer and the product. They're really great marketers. They have great technology companies. They have great marketing departments. But until you fix the problem, which is that flowers should not be ugly, you should have a beautiful bouquet and you should take care of your customer. If those flowers sat on a porch in 100-degree heat and died, you should send them a new one really quickly and make sure they're taken care of. And that's what we do.
Yeah, no, I love it. A lot of respect. So, you said you will turn over like over 60 million this year. And you're profitable. Are you able to share kind of like a roundabouts for the margins or?
Yeah. So until this year, we ran it as close to zero as possible. That's the only thing that we were like Amazon on, right? I would try to run it
Wow.
I would budget 2% profit and then I could afford to do some marketing if I had more than 2% profit. So,
wow.
Yeah, we ran it close to zero as possible in order to be able to grow it. And then, because everything is how much marketing you spend, how much, like all the things require how much subsidies you can do on shipping. We've had to turn off certain areas that the subsidies were too high in. And so it's very controlled, like you said earlier. But everything was controlled down to the profit.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. So you're running it like a VC-based model where you're not, like you could be profitable, but you're extremely aggressive on growth.
Yes. We could make a lot more money if I had done things differently and not tried to get 100% growth numbers. If I had tried to do this at a 10 to 20% growth and stayed, what that would mean is I wouldn't do national shipping. The subsidies are far too great. I never started this company to be a small business. I want to grow it to $1 billion. And so that's what I'm doing.
Billion in revenue or billion in valuation?
Billion in revenue.
I'd love to know what have been your biggest lessons that, you've really learnt from during this time from a point of reflection.
How I set up the company was all of it was choices, like everything is a choice. And so I can either make the choice to walk away now. And I thought about it because, I don't pay myself a whole lot of money. I'm not the CEO that makes $500,000 a year. I was paying myself $60,000 a year, putting everything back into the company. This was like my baby, and I didn't set myself up well either, because when I sat there feeling sorry for myself and thinking, oh my gosh, I would have made more money if I just stayed at Stanford, like literally, and I just worked 120 hours a week for 10 years, that's not smart either. So, it sounds like a weird thing to say, but like making sure that you're setting yourself up well, that you're setting your company up well, and not like, I was like putting every dime back into the company because this was so important to me and it could be gone tomorrow, it could really be gone tomorrow. So there's that learning. We've had everything from, with that, we had to redo our whole distribution. I mean, it has definitely shown a very bright light. And I always knew this, but to see it so clearly on the importance of your team. And, I can't do this myself. And so it's just making sure that I'm taking care of my team because they're so important.
Awesome. Well, look, that was an amazing interview. Thank you so much for your time and congratulations on your success.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
If you love this episode, make sure to check out my interview with Emma Greed on how solving a problem she was so passionate about led to the creation of Skims and Good American.
And so I do think so much of it starts with like addressing things that bother you, that you find, you've got to create a solution for, because, at the end of the day, you've got to be passionate enough and sometimes crazy enough to go round and round and round to actually solve a problem.